I became a ghost 10 years ago. A streamer found a cherished photo of mine and started the "I Search for Richard" campaign online. When I saw him again, he was about to get married. I wish I could disappear. But if I truly disappear, he will end up lonely for the rest of his life. Before I died, I still held on to that half of the photo. Chapter 1. On the night I died, a fire suddenly broke out in the mental hospital. Due to the hospital's special structure, many patients couldn't escape and perished in the blaze. After death, I continued to wander the mental hospital. At first, I had some companions with me. Later on, they gradually disappeared, leaving me alone here. I couldn't stray too far from the mental hospital, so I whiled away the days sitting by the window. I watched the sunset many, many times, far more than 44 times. And so, 10 years passed. The mental hospital gradually fell into disrepair. The surrounding weeds grew taller, thorns entwined the ruins, and wild roses bloomed abundantly on the rubble. The nearby residents all said the place was haunted, that there was a female ghost who ate people, warning children to stay away, and saying that if they misbehaved, the ghost would take them away. Absolute nonsense. I never ate anyone, let alone catch children. One day, a girl suddenly appeared, holding a phone and muttering to herself. "Hello everyone, I'm the host Dora. This is the legendary haunted Qingshan Mental Hospital, abandoned for 10 years. It's said that a fire killed 27 people back then. Rumor has it that the youngest victim was only 18. Afterwards, even the hospital director was arrested. Tonight, let's see together if there are really ghosts here." I leaned in close to look at her phone. I knew it. She was live streaming. Some nearby residents also often live stream to make money. She suddenly shrank back, then continued. "Although it's been 10 years, you can still see how big the fire was. The walls are all black, the burn marks are severe." As she spoke and walked, she arrived at my ward, scanning the dark room before her gaze settled on a corner of the wall. Dora crouched down and pulled out a blackened iron box from the damaged wall. I was beside myself with worry. "That's mine. It's mine. Don't touch it." But she couldn't hear me and even opened my iron box. My secret was exposed just like that. She's so mean. She picked up the photo with only half of it burned and said to the camera, "Look, the girl in the photo is so pretty. She looks young, I wonder if she was an adult." I snorted in anger. "Don't think I'll forgive you just because you complimented me. And, I am an adult. Not young at all. I've even been in love before." Comments scrolled by. Could she be the patient who died at 18? Underage deceased hold a lot of grudges, better not touch their belongings. What a pity, so young and died. There were rumors that this mental hospital was managed very strictly at that time, or else there wouldn't have been so many patients who didn't escape during the fire. Wait, there seems to be another person in the photo. You can see a bit of a shoulder in black clothes, like a boy. Is that her crush? Can mentally ill people have crushes? Being liked by a mad person, that's bad luck just thinking about it. Seeing those comments made me feel a bit sad. I'm not mentally ill, I just have autism. My dad said, as long as I get proper treatment, once I'm better, I can fall in love. I can like people. I'm not crazy. Dora frowned at her phone and said. One after another calling me crazy, what are they saying? If you can't speak properly, get out of my live stream. I feel like Dora might not be that bad after all. She flipped the photo to the back and saw 2 words written there. Richard. Chapter 2. Richard, he was my first love. Because I didn't want to go to school, starting from my 2nd year of high school, he became my tutor. That year, he was 19. My dad said he was very talented, he was also from the same high school as me, was the top scorer in our city, and a brilliant student at University B. Skipping 3 grades, and by his 3rd year, he had already secured a spot for postgraduate studies. Why don't we let him tutor you? I didn't say anything. Whether I agreed or not, he would become my tutor. Before Richard, my dad hired many tutors for me. But during my lessons, I always liked to do other things, like drawing or wood carving, lost in my own world. Those tutors eventually left on their own. When Richard first arrived, I didn't pay attention to him either. I thought he would also talk behind my back. Give me all sorts of nicknames. Those people thought I was a fool, couldn't speak, and wouldn't complain. That's how they did things. But he just kept talking to me non-stop, regardless of whether I listened or not. Actually, I could understand most of what he said. After class, he took out a few papers. These are exercises matching today's lesson. If you have time, do them, and I'll discuss them in class tomorrow. I didn't do them because I wasn't interested. I scribbled all over his papers. He said, "You drew this frog pretty well. It was clearly a tree frog. How could it be a regular frog? So annoying. Did I say something wrong?" I ignored him. He lowered his gaze and started talking. Richard had long eyelashes, and when he blinked, it was like the wings of a butterfly. Richard was always very calm, as if he didn't care whether I paid attention to him or not. Do you understand this question? If not, you can tell me, and I'll explain it again. He tapped the table with his fingertips. I didn't respond to him. Since you understand, let's move on to the next question. When I didn't understand, I'd glance at him, and he would explain it again. I found it amusing, intentionally looking at him again after he finished explaining. After repeating this 5 times, Richard remained calm. It's strange, isn't he ever angry? A month later, I said my first words to him. What is a little monster? Why do my classmates call me a little monster? Richard was surprised for a moment, then asked me. Who said that? I didn't tell him. He asked again. Someone called you that? I nodded. Then he drew a picture for me. He asked. What is this? A snake eating an elephant. Richard gave a faint smile and said. But many people think it's a hat. So silly. He said. People always express negativity towards those who are different from them. They think you're different, so they have biases against you. Prejudice is the little monster, not you. But I am indeed different from normal people. You're just very special. Everyone is different from each other, that's nothing unusual. No one has ever told me these things before. He asked me. Do you want to know the story behind this picture? I nodded. Finish this paper and I'll tell you. All right. Richard brought me a book. I felt like I was as special as the little prince in the book. Richard, even more so. The little prince lived on a planet where he could see the sunset 44 times in a day. Richard, I also want to see the sunset 44 times in a day. If you can get into B University on your college entrance exam, I'll take you to see it. I hesitated. I didn't like going to school, nor did I like people outside. But with Richard, maybe the outside world wouldn't be so bad. Chapter 3. After the college entrance exam, Richard took me to B University. In the school auditorium, I watched the sunset 44 times. Richard programmed it with code and created the special effects with models. He said he wouldn't be teaching me anymore. Why? The college entrance exam is over. Richard, I like you. The college entrance exam was over, but my liking for him wasn't. You're still young, you haven't seen the outside world. I understood. Richard wouldn't like a little monster like me. Richard, I'm not stupid. If you don't like me, you can say it directly, but don't deny my feelings. I rarely spoke so seriously and earnestly. Just because I don't like to speak doesn't mean I don't have my own thoughts. Richard was stunned. I knew many people liked Richard. I could see that look of liking someone in their eyes. But Richard couldn't understand my gaze and denied my feelings. He didn't know that I had let him enter my world. If he didn't want to, then so be it. I stopped talking to Richard. No matter what he said, I wouldn't listen. As long as I wanted to, I could block out all external noises and just live in my own world. When I was young, I couldn't understand what others were saying, and I couldn't come out of my own world. I didn't understand why my mom cried in front of me. After she left, I didn't feel anything special either. It was only after a long period of therapy that I learned to come out of my own world. Although I still often don't understand overly complex emotions. But I know tears represent sadness. My mom didn't not want me. After meeting Richard, I learned again what it means to like someone. Liking someone means sharing your world with them, wanting to be with them, and feeling happy even if you're doing nothing together. When I told Richard some strange thoughts, he would think about them seriously and then respond. Although sometimes it wasn't the answer I wanted, I liked Richard's responses. He never brushed me off. After rejecting me, when Richard dropped me off at my doorstep, he asked, "Are you never going to talk to me again? Since he doesn't like me anyway, why care about my thoughts?" But I still honestly nodded. "Can't we continue being friends? But I like you, and if you don't like me, I'll be sad. If you like someone else and are with them, I'll be sad too. So, I can't be your friend. He's not my friend, he's the one I like. I will keep Richard in a secret corner of my heart, letting my liking for him become something personal to me. If he decides to come to my world next time, I'll invite him again." But Richard fell silent. I don't know what he's thinking. As I was about to leave, Richard held my wrist. He said, "I don't want to make you sad. Now, Richard and I are together." He's still the same, messaging me every day, calling me, telling me stories, and taking me out to play. We rode a Ferris wheel together and watched dolphins. When I'm scared, he holds my hand. He's taking up more and more space in my heart. I just want to be with Richard all the time. I still want to smell the fresh laundry scent on him, hug him, kiss him. I really like Richard. But when my dad found out, he wouldn't let me be with him. My dad said he's very poor, and dating me is just a way to trick our family out of money. I didn't know how to explain, just kept repeating. No, no, no. Richard is not like that. He likes me, and I like him. My dad said. Do you even know what like means? He's a normal person, how could he possibly like you? He's just after your money. I shouldn't have hired him as your tutor in the first place. No. 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 Richard didn't deceive me. I know what like means. You don't know. You've been deceived by him. I do know. I just know. No one cared about my cries. My dad locked me in my room, not allowing me to see Richard. On a rainy day, Richard stood outside the gate of our villa, refusing to leave. I screamed loudly in my room, my throat hurting, but my dad wouldn't open the door. Wait for Richard. Just a little more for Richard, give him some time, he'll become outstanding later on. He's not after our money. He truly likes me. I retreated back into my own world, no longer speaking to my dad, not eating, just wanting to see Richard. My dad said, "As long as you behave and get better, I'll let you see him. Together. Not just seeing him, I want to be with him. Okay, once you get better, I'll let you be together." I was admitted to the mental hospital, taking medication and undergoing treatment every day. Most of the time, I could only look at the outside world through the window. I kept waiting to get better so I could be with Richard. Although I didn't know what being normal meant. I could finish all the college entrance exam papers, score highly, but they wouldn't ask me those questions, they'd ask me difficult questions. What do you think like means? Can you understand the concepts of love or marriage? I remained silent. That day, a new person arrived at the mental hospital. The nurse said she had hidden her mental illness history, but after getting married, she relapsed, and now her husband had brought her in. The nurse said she harmed herself and others. Mental illness is hereditary. That man must be miserable, regretting falling in love with her and marrying her. I suddenly felt very scared. Turns out, just liking each other isn't enough to be together. Being together could lead to regrets. Maybe they were right, I don't understand anything. Even after being dead for 10 years, I still don't understand. Why should I be locked up in a mental hospital for treatment just because I like Richard? Why doesn't anyone believe that I genuinely like Richard? Chapter 4. Dora suddenly became very excited. She said to her phone, "Why don't we start an event? Let's call it Finding Richard. Let's uncover the story behind this half of a photo." She placed the photo in an iron box, then left the mental hospital with the box in hand. I was anxious, only able to follow behind her. "Give it back to me. That's my photo." But she couldn't hear me. Then I left the mental hospital, following her all the way back home. I realized that it wasn't the mental hospital that was trapping me, it was this photo. I could only move around the photo. I watched Dora post my photo online, collecting news, contacting various people, inquiring about Changshan Mental Hospital. The entire internet is searching for Richard started trending. I was a little scared that Richard would find out that I had died. He would be devastated. If Richard died, I probably would never come out of my own world again. But I couldn't stop Dora. Because I was already dead. At that moment, Dora came across a news article. The internet tech giant Richard was set to return to the country next week to attend an artificial intelligence summit. Richard. She suddenly sat up from the bed, her face mask falling off. Then, she muttered to herself again. "Impossible, impossible." I stared at the photo in the news, too afraid to blink. It was Richard. It was a 30-year-old Richard. It was my first love, Richard. Did he always live abroad? Did he forget about me? Why doesn't he come to the mental hospital to see me? Is it because I didn't get cured? Also, why doesn't the 30-year-old Richard smile? Is he unhappy? I really want to see him. I glanced at Dora, then at her home, and decided not to bother her. 2 days later, someone online left a message claiming to know me. Dora saw the message and became very excited, dancing around. She really likes surprises, Richard never acted this way. After she calmed down, I nervously looked at her phone with her. The person in the photo is my high school classmate. She started skipping school in the second year of high school, then we lost touch with her. Her name is Janice, a bit abnormal, but not harmful to others. She just doesn't pay attention in class, always hands in blank papers, seems to not hear what others say, never interacts with anyone. Looking back now, she probably had autism. That's right, it's autism, not a mental illness. Besides not studying, talking, or interacting with others, she's pretty normal in other aspects. Dora immediately contacted the person. "Do you know Richard? What's the relationship between him and Janice?" "I don't know him," Janice ignores everyone. "But, the name Richard sounds familiar, let me think." I silently prayed for him not to remember. But prayers were in vain. I remembered. He was our senior in high school, the top scorer in the city's college entrance examination that year. You can search the news, you should find his photo. After Dora finished searching, she said a curse word. Darn. Isn't this Richard, one of the current top 3 internet giants? It can't be this coincidental. Of course, it couldn't be. Dora, please, do not ask Richard about the photo. On the day Richard returned to the country, Dora still managed to contact his journalist friend and went to stake out Richard together. I floated nervously next to Dora. Although I was afraid Richard would find out that I had died, I could finally see him quietly. And then, I finally saw the 30-year-old Richard. But there was another girl by his side, holding Richard's arm intimately as they walked together. I felt a bit angry and sad. I never held Richard's arm. Would Richard like her the way he liked me? Thinking about this, my heart felt like it was being corroded by a drizzle of acid, bit by bit. But I was also a bit happy because Richard seemed to be doing very well. Dora rushed up directly and held up half of the photo, asking, "Richard, Do you still know the person in the photo? Oh my God. Why is she so reckless? Her question was very abrupt and inappropriate. But Richard stopped in his tracks. His gaze fell on the photo, then turned coldly towards Dora. Not only did Dora get scared, I also took a step back in fright. Richard's gaze seemed like it could devour someone. I don't know. Chapter 5. My hopeful anticipation shattered heavily on the ground. Richard said he didn't know me. Dora sat in the car, holding the photo in her hand, puzzled. Could it really be a mistake? But Richard's reaction just now was strange, not like not knowing. I don't understand, how could Richard forget about me? Was his past affection all fake? I didn't bother about him liking someone else, but how could he forget about me? Now, even if he knew I had died, he probably wouldn't be sad, right? Suddenly, someone knocked on Dora's car door, the girl who had been standing with Richard just now. She said, "Hello, I'm Louise. I can pay to buy the photo in your hand, name your price." "Sorry, I'm not selling it for any price. But if you can tell me if Richard knows the person in this photo, I might just give it to you." I can tell you, the person in the photo almost ruined Richard. What? Having this photo is not a good thing. Louise looked at the photo and said, "Anything related to this woman is a sensitive issue for Richard. You should be careful." "Is that so?" Dora handed the photo to Louise. I heard her muttering behind her. "Things are getting interesting. Whether it's a sensitive issue or not, you'll have to touch it to find out." I thought Louise would destroy the photo, but unexpectedly, she actually brought the photo to the hotel and handed it to Richard. "Have you not let go of her yet?" Richard took the photo, didn't even look at it, and threw it directly into the trash. He said, "I've long forgotten who she is." Louise's attitude felt a bit strange. I sat at Richard's feet, looking at the photo in the trash can, unable to describe how terrible I felt. That was the only photo of Richard and me. When we went to the amusement park together, I took it with a camera. I still remember, he was holding a pink cotton candy at the time, especially sweet. He even said he would always like me. He changed his mind. But I didn't. That day, I developed 2 photos. One was torn up by my dad. Also because of a photo, he found out about me and Richard dating. I secretly brought the remaining photo into the mental hospital. During the fire, I hid the photo in an iron box for candies. Behind a peeling wall, there was a mouse hole. I put the box inside, blocking it with my body, and luckily saved half of the photo. After becoming a ghost, I painted Richard's face in my mind every day. Even though the photo was destroyed, I never forgot what he looked like. Every word he said to me, I remember. All in my head. But Richard forgot. Chapter 6. The hotel cleaning lady threw my photo into an even bigger trash can. I could only follow her. Actually, I wanted to tell Richard. In these 10 years, I have understood many things. I have seen teenage girls and boys kissing in the alley, promising to love each other for a lifetime, but the boy would turn around and kiss someone else, making the same promises again. I have also seen married couples arguing during a divorce, fighting over property and children, hating each other so much they wish the other dead. I have even seen couples who didn't like each other, but chose to be together after a blind date, showing no love in their eyes. I still can't define what it means to like someone. But I know, my liking for him surpasses most of them. I won't lie, and I won't change my mind. I have kept all the promises I made to him. But now, I can't understand Richard's liking. Late at night, I leaned against the trash can. Liking is indeed a very complex thing. No wonder my dad thinks I can't learn. Before dawn, I saw Richard in pajamas running over. With red eyes, he rummaged through the trash can, then picked up my photo. After wiping it clean, he tucked it into his pocket. Richard is feeling sad. Why? Didn't you say you forgot? He took my photo back to the room, sat on the bed with a dejected look, motionless. Liking shouldn't be something that makes people sad. I want to tell Richard. If he feels sad, then he shouldn't like me anymore. It doesn't matter if he forgets me. I regret leaving this photo behind. I don't want to see Richard sad. Richard put the photo in his wallet and carried it with him. So, I could be with Richard every day. He never mentioned my name, nor tried to find out what happened to me. He still knows nothing about my death. After the summit, he and Louise attended a banquet together. Everyone praised them as the perfect couple and asked when they would get married. Thinking that Richard is going to marry someone else, I just want to disappear. I hope he's happy, but I don't want to see him happy with my own eyes. Liking is selfish, it's exclusive. I even thought, why not let Richard know that I'm dead, so maybe he would remember me and not marry Louise. I'm really selfish. Richard bought the villa where I used to live. The agent told him. This is a haunted house. It has changed hands twice. The previous owner went bankrupt. The owner before that committed suicide here. The original residents, it said their child died tragically, at the age of 18. The owner was so devastated, they moved abroad. Would you like to reconsider? When I heard this, I shuddered. But Richard was busy replying to messages and didn't hear a word. Contract. After reading it, Richard promptly signed his name. Despite Richard's neat handwriting and slender fingers, they were not agile at all. When he was carving, he needed me to guide him step by step. And when I talked to him, he was never focused, his ears always as red as cherries, making me lose focus too. I never got to pick the cherry, and I lost it forever. Late at night, Richard sat in the room where we used to have classes, without turning on the lights. Looking around, I realized all my things were long gone, replaced by unfamiliar furniture. He lit a cigarette and quietly gazed out the window. What is Richard thinking? The next day, he had all the things moved out. The villa instantly became empty. Richard would come here every day, spending some time, doing nothing. The sunset shines through the floor-to-ceiling windows into the room. He sits on the floor, looking at the wild roses planted outside the window. The sunset falls on him, creating a melancholic atmosphere. I sit beside him, quietly keeping him company. Richard, are you thinking of me? You clearly remember me, so why lie? Does liking me make it difficult for you to speak about? Richard. Chapter 7. Both Richard and I turned our heads. Louise approached. She seemed a bit angry. You said you forgot, didn't you? We're about to leave here soon, and you bought the house where she used to live. If you can't let her go, why not just go find her? No. Richard can't come find me. He has to live well. I don't want Richard to die. Find her, and then what? She doesn't understand what liking someone means. Do you hate her then? I don't hate. She didn't do anything wrong, she just doesn't like me. But I don't have the courage to like her again. I dare not try again. What are they talking about? Why is Richard saying these things again? I know what liking someone means. Even though I died at 18, I am now 28. I despise anyone denying my feelings. They are not me, why do they think of me like this? Richard calmly said. I am like a rose in this garden, no different from the other roses. She may like this one today, and another one tomorrow. No. Richard is different. For the past 10 years, I have not changed my phone number. I answer every unknown call, just in case it's her calling. Richard, before I went to the psychiatric hospital, my dad took away my phone. I wanted to find you, but I couldn't. Her father said I wasn't good enough for her, that she grew up in an ivory tower, with the best of everything. Following me, she would only suffer. I worked hard to prove I was worthy of her, that I wouldn't let her suffer. Driven by reluctance, I have come this far. Now that I have reached a high position, as long as she wants to find me, she can find me, but she hasn't looked for me. Richard, I am right beside you. She may have forgotten me long ago. I have never forgotten you. Her dad was right, she doesn't even know what it means to like someone, I deceived her. Don't say that. Richard, I was the one who liked you first, the one who wanted you to be with me. Richard didn't cry. But Louise did. Let's go back abroad, we're never coming back, she's not worth it. Richard placed the photo he was holding on the floor. Okay. Richard left. I sat on the floor, watching the sunset alone. For the first time, I tasted the flavor of tears. Richard, I have learned to cry. Losing someone does indeed shatter the heart. Richard, I am dead. So I can never be with you again. Even if I found you, you wouldn't see me. My soul is starting to become transparent, able to drift around. I drifted to Dora's house. I saw her computer. Exposed the scandals of the internet tycoon Richard. I was his college friend, he indeed had some talent in computers, but his character was terrible. In his senior year, while tutoring a rich girl, he seduced her, who had some mental issues, in an attempt to marry into wealth, but he was kicked out. He had already been recommended for a graduate program, but this incident was reported, he lost his recommendation, and couldn't continue at school, so he dropped out and went abroad. He started his business abroad with the help of Louise, founded a tech company, and reached where he is today, all thanks to marrying a rich girl. I see him as the epitome of a man who rose from the ashes. Is it because of his poor health that he can only live off a woman? No. How dare they slander Richard like this? Dora, please help me, tell them the truth, it's not like this. I wish so much that when Richard was defamed and lost his recommendation, I could have stood by his side and cleared up all the rumors for him. No wonder he stopped liking me. How helpless must he have felt facing all those rumors alone. If only I had stood up for him back then, he wouldn't have been forced to drop out. But I abandoned him. Richard must have been so hurt. Even though he must have been hurting, he said he doesn't hate me, he just doesn't dare to like me again. Dora, please, help me. Dora seemed to hear my plea and contacted a former classmate from B University. Senior, I remember you and Richard were classmates. How much do you know about the scandals online about him? When Richard was dating the wealthy girl, someone saw them and took a photo, then not only reported it to the school but also posted it on the school's forum. Richard may seem mild-mannered, but he's not one to be messed with. He traced the IP address and exposed the male classmate spreading rumors, who was trying to steal Richard's spot for graduate studies. In the end, that person faced consequences. As for Richard and the wealthy girl, there wasn't concrete evidence. The school wanted Richard to bring his girlfriend to explain, but Richard refused. In the end, to calm the public outcry, the school had to revoke his recommendation for graduate studies. Everyone knows Richard wouldn't seduce some wealthy girl with intellectual disabilities just to marry into wealth. Among the people who pursued him at the time, there were plenty who were attractive and wealthy. But there were too many people throwing stones at him. He was severely criticized and even bullied on campus for a while, then he dropped out. As for Louise, she's his younger sister who visited Richard during university. After Richard's parents divorced, his sister changed her last name and went abroad with their mother. Chapter 8. Perhaps someone, jealous of Richard's success now, found some hackers on the internet to attack him in various ways. I see. Senior, would you be willing to speak up fairly? No problem. I already felt guilty for standing by and doing nothing back then. No matter how successful Richard is now, I feel like I owe him for our time as classmates. Thank you. But what's your relationship with him? Why are you so concerned about his affairs? Fate brought us together through a photo. I'll explain more to you later. By the way, if possible, Senior, could you ask in the alumni group if anyone else is willing to speak up for Richard? All right, I'll take care of this matter. After hanging up with Dora, she made another call. Excuse me, were you a nurse at the Qingshan Mental Hospital back then? I want to inquire about a person, her name is Janice, do you remember her? The other person remained silent for a long time before slowly saying. I remember her. She also perished in that big fire. Why was she hospitalized for treatment in the first place? She wasn't sick, she was perfectly normal. Dora continued. Then why was she sent to a mental hospital for treatment? She had autism, but autism does not fall under mental illness. And she had received good treatment since childhood, just like any normal person. She just didn't like to talk much and wasn't very willing to communicate with others. It was her father who insisted on her being hospitalized. I believe the real problem was her father. He didn't believe his daughter was a normal person. It's quite common for an 18-year-old to fall in love. She could have lived well, she was intelligent and had a talent for drawing. She once asked me to contact someone, but her father didn't allow her to communicate with that person, so I didn't help her. Later, she wrote many letters herself in the ward, but they were all burned in the fire. If I had known what happened to her later, I would have helped her. Do you know what was in those letters? I don't know. But I know she liked someone named Richard. She would wait by the window every day, hoping Richard would come to see her. I don't know who Richard is, but I believe she really liked him. After Dora hung up the phone, she sat quietly in her chair, staring expressionlessly at the computer screen, then her eyes turned red. She posted the recording of her conversation with the nurse online and wrote a paragraph. When Janice was sent to the mental hospital for treatment, when Richard was being slandered, the whole world was denying their love. In the end, one died at 18, the other remained single for 10 years, yet society still refused to acknowledge that they had loved each other. I believe that Janice truly liked Richard, they simply had an ordinary romance. The photo in the iron box was preserved with her life. Although she is no longer here, her affection was real. Please do not defame her lover. Dora, thank you. If I were still alive, I would definitely be friends with you. Chapter 9. I floated back to the airport. I saw Louise making a phone call. After the IT department tracks down the IP address of the rumor spreader, hand it over to the legal department, one by one. After hanging up the phone, I heard her curse. Janice, you really know how to play dead, just like 10 years ago, and still the same 10 years later. Why can't you speak up for my brother? He liked you so much, why would you do this? How can you bear to watch him being cyberbullied? Janice, for these 10 years, he has been waiting for you. But what about you? Her phone rang. Louise answered the call. Louise, several alumni from B University have come forward to clear things up for CEO Richard, causing quite a stir. And there's something else, a famous YouTuber with 1 million followers, named Dora, recently started an activity online called Find Richard, and it's gone viral across the internet. Find Richard? Looking for my brother? Yes. Why does she want to find my brother? Because of a photo. Wait a minute, I think I know who this Dora you're talking about is. What does she want to do? She's a supernatural exploration YouTuber, and she recently visited a mental hospital. Stop, get to the point. Dora said that CEO Richard's first love, Janice, passed away 10 years ago. What are you saying? 10 years ago, Janice was sent to Qingshan Mental Hospital for treatment, the hospital caught fire, and she was one of the casualties. Repeat that. What was her name? Janice. With a clatter, Louise's phone fell to the ground. Richard, who was not far away reading messages on his phone, looked up. What's wrong? Nothing, just feeling a bit angry about those filthy things online. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. Okay, bro. What? It's nothing. Fortunately, Louise didn't tell Richard the truth. I've held him captive for 10 years, and I don't want to trap him for a lifetime with my own death. Love is selfish, exclusive, but also fulfilling, and letting go. After my death, I always hoped Richard would come to see me, because I missed him so much. Later on, I waited for too long. I also thought that Richard must have forgotten about me a long time ago. But I still wanted to see him one last time. Now, my obsession is finally fading away. I watched as my body completely turned transparent. Thank you to everyone who helped me find Richard, and thank you to everyone who cleared Richard's name. In the 10th year after my death, I finally met my one true love. Even if no one believed in my love. 30-year-old Richard, please don't doubt it, the 18-year-old Janice did like you.
Extra. Before boarding the plane, Louise grabbed Richard's arm. I thought it would be better to tell you this after you completely let go of her, but I was afraid that you would blame me. What are you talking about? Bro, Janice is dead, she died 10 years ago. After saying this, Louise bit her lip hard. She didn't intentionally not speak up for you, she just died, couldn't speak up for you, couldn't come find you. After your relationship was exposed, she was sent to a mental hospital, she couldn't contact the outside world. That photo was taken when the mental hospital caught fire, she shielded it with her body. She truly liked you. Bro, she liked you more than you can imagine. This misunderstanding that spanned 10 years was finally revealed in a tragic way. She eventually told Richard the truth. She just couldn't bear to keep it hidden. It was so unfair to Janice. Louise finally couldn't hold back, tears falling heavily. She was only 18 when she died. She was always waiting for Richard to come find her. Richard smiled. Don't talk nonsense. Then his smile froze on his face. He didn't board the plane, turned around, and went back home. His steps seemed unsteady, as if he could collapse at any moment. On the floor, the photo of 18-year-old Janice looking at him with a smile. Richard fell to his knees, holding the photo, letting out a heart-wrenching cry of despair. He thought that her not loving him was the cruelest thing. He still remembered that rainy day 10 years ago when he went to see her. Her father pointed at him and scolded. Don't think I don't know what plans a poor boy like you is making. Let me tell you, my daughter is not normal at all. If it weren't for you deceiving her, she would never have fallen in love with you. She doesn't even know what liking someone means. In her eyes, you are no different from a dog or a flower. I never thought Janice was abnormal, nor did I think her affection was fake. Her eyes were so clear, hiding no secrets. He was certain that was love. She loved him. All right. If you don't believe me, let's wait and see. After you leave her life, she will immediately forget you, because that's how she's always been. She doesn't love anyone. When her mom left her, she didn't cry or search for her. If she contacts you first, even just once, I'll let you be together. But if she doesn't contact you, you should never reach out to her, never tempt her, never disturb her, or I will make sure you never see her in your lifetime. He wanted to fight for it. But the other party said, Richard, she's only 18. Yes, she was only 18. He could wait. Later, Richard sent her many messages, all of which went unanswered. She truly never contacted him again. When he decided to go abroad, he thought about changing his phone number, but in the end, he couldn't bring himself to do it. Janice was just a little monster. A little monster who didn't care about receiving someone's affection. But he loved the little monster. At 20, his first love came to an end without warning. 10 years later, he couldn't help but return to his country with great fanfare. During these 10 years, drunk, he dialed that number, but it was already out of service. All his courage disappeared in an instant. He didn't dare to try to contact her again, nor did he dare to seek her out. He just waited. But he could never wait long enough. He thought her father was right. She didn't understand what liking someone meant. In the beginning, it was his deception that led her to misunderstand love and be with him. Janice became the forbidden fruit he couldn't touch. Touching it hurt. But he was wrong. She didn't reach out to him because she had been dead for 10 years. In this era of cheap love, her affection was indeed abnormal. Coincidentally, he was abnormal too. At 18, she protected a photo with her own life. Richard spent his whole life missing her. At the age of 40, his head was full of white hair, his appearance withered, his eyes melancholic, like an elderly man in twilight. That year, Richard died alone in a nursing home. He remained unmarried throughout his life, going to his death in solitude. Before his death, he tightly held onto the remaining half of a photo. In his final moments, he saw the 18-year-old Janice. He wasn't sure how to face her. She hadn't changed at all. But he had aged. Sorry, I'm too late. Janice's clear eyes showed shock and sadness, not disdain. Richard, how did you come so quickly? To him, it was already too slow. Because I missed you so much. Just like when he used to tutor her, he couldn't help but stand outside her door half an hour early. During their dates, he couldn't resist starting to wait for her an hour in advance. In the 20 years without her, he wrote many futile letters to her. Richard knew that Janice had her own world, she never felt lonely. But he was too lonely. In a world without her, every minute felt long and unbearable.